Welcome to meditation and prayer. We're learning about the Shema. There's a lot to talk about the Shema. Much to talk about. Yesterday we spoke about the difference between the first and the second paragraph of the Shema. How the first paragraph tends to be in the singular tense, and the second paragraph is in the future tense. And I just want to elaborate on a moment, because as modern people, we struggle with finding a balance. There are capitalists that are all about the success of the individual. And there are communists who, by definition, are trying to create a commune, trying to create something in which everybody is equal. And the question is, which one is correct? And which one is not correct? What does Torah have to say about capitalism and communism? Capitalism is certainly practiced very successfully by many Jewish people, and communism was actually designed by Jewish people. The whole kibbutz concept in Israel, kibbutz means a commune. It's a communist approach to life. It was Winston Churchill who said that the inherent vice of communism is the unequal distribution of misery. The inherent vice of capitalism is the unequal distribution of happiness. The unequal. So communism is the equal. Capitalism is the. I'm starting again. Winston Churchill said, communism is the equal distribution of misery. That's what I meant. Communism is the equal distribution of misery, and capitalism is the unequal distribution of happiness. Like George Orwell describes in Animal Farm, all animals were created equal, but some animals were created more equal than others. He was talking about Napoleon and I forget the other guy's name, with a P something, talking about the pigs that were in charge. In communism, it might have worked if not that the people at the top were corrupt. Capitalism is where every man is on his own. But we notice as Jewish people that we have a very delicate balance. You may want to call it compassionate capitalism. We have a delicate balance where we straddle both lanes. For example, you have the law of Shemitah. Law of Shemitah is the law of the sabbatical year. Every year, for 6 years, you work your own fields, and you're the master of your own bank account, and to each man his own. But then comes the 7th year, and in the 7th year, you have to leave the field fallow, and everybody's allowed to enter the field. It belongs to everyone. That is the law of Shemitah. The sabbatical year takes place till this very day in Israel. It is a great test of faith for the farmers to be able to literally shut down their farms and open the doors and say, whoever wants to come to the field can come and eat. And for them to trust in God that they're going to get their livelihood somehow, they're still going to be able to survive. God actually promises them that if you trust in me, if you exhibit the trait of bitachon, of trust, then I will ensure that you will experience far greater prosperity in the 6th, 7th, and 8th year. In other words, you'll have much more produce than usual to be able to care and provide for. In the 7th year, you're a communist. You're working together, right? So you have both lanes. As a Jew, we're required to straddle both lanes. You've got to grow on your own spiritually and take full responsibility for your own spiritual growth and your own relationship with God. That's the first paragraph of the Shema in the individual tense. And in the second paragraph of the Shema, we're in the collective. That's when we say that you're not allowed to separate yourself from the community. You have to be part of a minyan. You have to be part of a shul. You have to be part of the community, and you cannot separate yourself. We have the best of both, where you're on your own, but also you have to be viewed as part of the collective as well. So that's just a little bit more of an elaboration on the difference between the first and the second paragraphs of the Shema, both of which are very important, and a point really to ponder and meditate upon as we approach our meditation and prayer course. right? As you come across the Shema, it's not just endless, mindless reading and recital. It is actually talking to God. You're making affirmations of what you believe in. So when you read in the individual tense, and when you read the Shema second paragraph in the plural tense, you're able to look at it and understand that both have a very unique role to play, and you're not simply repeating things that you told God 5 seconds ago that he must have forgotten about. To address the comments over here, how long will the lessons remain on Facebook and YouTube? Warren, I believe they're going to stay there forever. As long as YouTube and Facebook keep their servers running, we have no intention of removing them. So you can always find that classes on facebook.com/Jewish Gardens, but they're much more organized on youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. YouTube allows you to create playlists so that at the top of each of our page at youtube.com/Jewish Gardens, you can click on playlists and look at all the nicely organized classes. There's all the lessons of Gates of Trust. There's all the lessons of meditation and prayer. There's the Souls on Fire lessons. There's the 2-minute meditations. There's the Talmud classes. Everything's over there. It's all nicely organized on YouTube. Ed Hochman, socialism is not communism. Difference is socialism can be democratic, determined by elected representatives. Communism is run by the government. It's not necessarily elected. I don't think I said socialism, did I? I was talking about communism. I don't think that I said socialism, and I'm pretty sure I didn't. Okay, so back to the Shema. So we're learning meditation and prayer. And we're introduced now, we learned yesterday the meaning of the word love, ve'ahavta. So we're at the beginning of the first paragraph of the Shema. We learned the meditation of Shema Yisrael, Havai Elokeinu, Havai Echad. And now we're on to the first paragraph, ve'ahavta, and you shall love et Hashem Elokecha. You shall love et. Now the word et is a preposition that has no translation in English, I'm sorry. There's no way to translate it. Just think of it like that. I mean, on a deeper level, Rabbi Kiva teaches in the Talmud that no word in the Torah is ever redundant, and even a word et, which has no translation, is coming to add something. I'll give you a quick example of that. It says, kabed et avicha ve'et imecha. Honor your father and your mother. Now in English you say honor your father and your mother. There's no redundant words over there. There's no words that don't make sense. But in Hebrew you say kabed, honor, et avicha, et your father, and honor et your mother. So the word et we don't really translate. Rabbi Kiva taught it comes to include something which would not normally have been included, and that in this case is your eldest brother. Together with honoring your parents, included in that commandment is also a commandment to honor your oldest brother, and that's what it's all about. So the word et is adding, good morning, Bob. The word et is adding something which was not normally there. Elsewhere it was taught that et Hashem Elokecha tira ve'oto tavod, et God your God you shall hold in awe and you shall serve him. The word et in that case is adding someone else that you're supposed to hold in awe and that you're supposed to serve. And the Talmud explains it's talking about the Torah scholars of the generation. Because when you respect not only God, but the Torah scholars, you're effectively respecting God as well. So there's a little addition, there's an ancillary that's being added by the word et. In the case of the Shema, I think it's beyond the pale of our discussion right now to discuss every single et when we're trying to get to the big fish, to the main words. So let it just be known that the word et is adding something we don't necessarily know yet, but as we evolve and grow in our studies, we'll eventually maybe get to there eventually one day. But let's move it along and say like this: Ve'ahavta, and you shall love et. We just spoke about Havai Elokecha. Now you've become a scholar now, because together we've learned that Havai Elokecha is a profound meditation when it comes to the names of God. We've learned in the Shema Yisrael, Havai Elokeinu. We learned in the mindful eating blessings, the blessings before food. It's the same names of God, and they're coming up over and over and over again. That the first name of God, Havaya, the tetragrammaton, the 4-letter name of God, represents God unlimited, God the way he is higher than time and space, God the way he is not limited to any laws of nature, logic, rhyme, or reason. And Elokecha is the way God hides behind the veil of consistency and repetition, also known as nature, also known as Mother Nature. So you shall love God your God. In English, it sounds a little repetitious, but in Hebrew, it falls into sharp focus as you realize, and who is it that you shall love? You shall love God Unlimited, who is also Mother Nature. I mean, right there, you can actually get stuck as you think, oh my God, how am I supposed to love? I mean, I love nature, but when I realize that God is Mother Nature, God infinite is Mother Nature, you think, oh my God, what about the things I don't like about nature? Like when bad things happen to people. And you can really start to struggle and say, I'm not sure that I love God because some bad things are happening. Like COVID-19. And I thought I was blaming that on Mother Nature, but now that I realize that Mother Nature is God and God is Mother Nature, that I'm not so cool with, right? And that's when you go back to yesterday's meditation, which was Ve'ahavta and you shall love. Love means to give. That's what we explained yesterday in the etymology of the word. To give. It means I don't love you because of what you have done for me, because of how you treat me, because of how you make me feel. I love you because of you. Because you are worthy. Because you are special. That's why I love you. Not because of how you treat me. It's not a take. Love is a give. That's the meaning of the word love in Hebrew. And therefore, I don't love God depending on how God treats me. I love God because God is God. God is almighty. God is all powerful. God is all kind, and God is just. That's why. Because God is the only entity deserving of being, of receiving my worship. If I've got questions, okay, I got questions, that's fine. But that doesn't mean that I cannot love God. On the contrary, I love God because of who God is, not because of how God treats me. It would be nice if God treated me nicely, and that's our call, which we often discuss over here in the comments. Our call for revealed good. How we ask of God to please make everything revealed good so that we don't have to struggle and grope in the darkness. And when we do so, when we ask for revealed good, we're effectively asking for the coming of Mashiach. We're asking God to send us Mashiach when the lights will be turned on, when we won't have to struggle anymore in the darkness, when we'll be able to see all the hidden good in everything as revealed good. But for the meantime, during this time of exile, we're saying, listen, and you shall love God Almighty, who is also Mother Nature. That's what it means. And then we continue with the next 6 words, which are very, very interesting. With all your heart. And with all your soul. And with all your very. Very, spelled V-E-R-Y. All your very. That's an interesting noun. With all your very. So what do you think that means? Brandon on YouTube, that simply indicates a direct object in the sentence. That's important if the language doesn't use punctuation. Okay, that's interesting. So from a grammatical perspective, Brandon, you're saying that it identifies the direct object. Because sometimes that could be confusing. So maybe in a language that doesn't use punctuation, like Hebrew, it's important to know who or what we're talking about. So that's a nice point there, Brandon. Thank you for sharing that. Good. So the first thing we realize is that there's 3 words that are repeated. Bechol levavcha, with all your heart. Uvechol nafshecha, and with all your soul. Uvechol meodecha, and with all your very. First thing we realize is the introduction of the word kol. I'm going to share that word with you right now. It's a very common and important word, which we need to be familiar with. I'm really hoping, guys, that you're keeping up with your word diaries. That you're keeping up with your word diaries. I really hope so, because that's just going to put you on the path to real fluency in Hebrew and making Hebrew a part of your lexicon. If you haven't done it already, you can just review the classes in the series at youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. Click at the top of the page where it says playlists and go to meditation and prayer and just go through the classes. And in those classes, I introduce you to all of the Hebrew word diaries, the words, and that way you can literally put them on index cards and just go through them on a regular basis before you're having your coffee in the morning, after lunch, again before your jog, and again after dinner, and again before you go to bed. And by going through the cards over and over and over again, the meaning of the words will be burnt into your memory. This is how they teach Hebrew. I was doing it with my daughter last night. That's how they do it. They teach you by literally repetition, and that way you become familiar intimately with the roots of every word. And once you know the root, you know the application of the word as well. It comes naturally. You'll see it. It's very, very nice. So the next word we're going to be introducing right now into our Hebrew word diaries, and I've run out of space in my. Actually, no. Maybe I have some more space on my whiteboard. I might bring it out in a few minutes. But the word we're about to introduce is the word kol. Kol is a 2-letter word. Starts with a kaf, and the kaf has a sister letter, kaf or chaf. If it has a cough drop, then it's a kaf, like a cough, C-O-U-G-H. And if it doesn't have a cough drop, then it's horse. And if it's horse, then it's like a horse. You know, you can't speak probably. So with a cough drop, it's nice and clear. It's a kaf. Without a cough drop, he's horse. So that's the letter kaf, not to be confused with the letter bet that has a little leg sticking out of over there in the back from his tuchus over there, and that would be the bet. The kaf has a nice rounded edge, right? That's the kaf, and we've learned about the letter lamed, which is the long, lanky letter, looks like a ladder, long, lanky ladder, for it is lamed. It goes up above the line. This letter starts on the regular line, but it goes up above the line, and together these letters produce the word kol. So it can be with the cough drop or without the cough drop. Depends on the grammar of the particular case. But in either case, whether it's a kaf like kol, or if it's a chaf like chol, it doesn't really matter. In both cases, you're dealing with the word that is kol, which means all. You may have heard of the song, Kol Haolam Kulo, Gesher Tzar Me'od. Gesher Tzar Me'od. The Kol Haolam Kulo, the whole world, all of it, is a very narrow bridge. The whole world is a very narrow bridge, a very narrow bridge. But the main thing is to recall, to have no fear at all. But the main thing is to recall, to have no fear at all. So those words are translated from Hebrew, Kol Haolam Kulo, Gesher Tzar Me'od Ve'haikar Lo Lefached Klal. Rhymes nicely in English, and obviously ties in beautifully to the doctrine of blind trust, because there's no other way to explain it. Otherwise, why would you have no fear? For what rational reason would you not have any fear in a world that's full of anxiety? It's obviously based upon, like I told you, the essence of Judaism is based upon this relationship with God, which is the ability to trust blindly in God as Almighty Maker of the universe and Master of the universe. But within that, you're starting to be able to apply your Hebrew word diary to say, oh, I recognize this, because when you look at that song, Kol Haolam Kulo, look at those first 3 words. Kol Haolam Kulo. Kol is a word we just learned, which means all. The third word is Kulo, which is the same root of Kol. It's just Kaf, Vav, Lamed, Vav. But it's the same root. The whole world, all of it. And the second word, Olam, is a word that we've already learned in our mindful eating class. It was the word number 10, I think, in our Hebrew word diary. Olam means a world. We learned about that. So when you see the song Kol Haolam Kulo, the whole world in its entirety, all of it, you know already the first 3 words of that song, and you say, hey, I feel like I speak Hebrew already because I know what I'm talking about. This is great stuff. And that's why I say to you that if you're able to do what I'm asking you, which is to do the Hebrew word diaries and to keep your index cards and to go through them very, very quickly, you'll be able to come to the realization that you're actually starting to apply Hebrew. Because I'm telling you right now, once we hit 100 words, you will be a pro. You'll be a master at Hebrew reading. Right now, we're up to about 20 words that we already learned. That's about 1/5 of our way. And you're well on the way to proficiency in Hebrew. It all depends on how much work you put into it. If you have the diligence, discipline to be able to write those words down as we come across them, and to put them onto your index cards and review them as I've been discussing. So that's the meaning of the word kol. So in this first phrase, the first sentence of the Shema, ve'ahavta and you shall love God Unlimited, who is Mother Nature, ve'ahavta Hashem Elokecha, b'chol levavcha, with all your heart, u'b'chol nafshecha, with all your soul, u'b'chol me'odecha, and with all your very. Now, I'm going to skip to the last word because there's a lot of conversation happening here on social media about my translation of the last word. So I said b'chol me'odecha means with all of your very. That's what I said. So Marty says, prayer book says might. I know. The prayer book says might, with all of your soul, with all of your hearts, with all of your soul, and with all of your might. That's how the prayer book translates it. I don't exactly agree. Rashi says that, actually. Rashi says, kochacha v'chayutcha, with your strength and your energy. And that's good. But I'm giving it more of a literal translation because what I'm doing right now is within the context of Hebrew. Rashi is applying the meaning of the word. He's explaining what does it mean with all your very, because it's a very strange word. I'm looking at the essence of the word so that you can learn the meaning of the word and apply it when you see it elsewhere. Because I don't want you to think of the word me'od as might, because if you do see the word as strength, the word me'od as strength, it could be confusing when you see it in other places. I'll give you an example. When you hand in a test to your teacher and the teacher gives you a result of 97%, the teacher will write Tov Me'od. Tov means good. Me'od means very. Tov Me'od means very good. The word Me'od means very. That's what it means. Let's see what Brandon is saying on YouTube. So, Brandon, why are you translating Modecha as very? Surely might is a better translation. Very is never announced, so it cannot be possessed. If there was such a word as veriness, that might work. But might is the closest thing we have in English. So Andy has answered Brandon. Me'od equals very, very. Right? He's right. So Andy's correct. The word me'od means very. Now, just because English doesn't have a noun for very, that doesn't mean that Hebrew cannot. Hebrew is a very, very colorful language when it comes to their liberal application of nouns and verbs in adjectives in all of each other's places. Sometimes you have an adjective as a noun as an adjective. It's fascinating. And when you really understand what's going on, when you understand the proper building blocks, you can look at something and say, 1 second, how could that, what is very? Very is an adjective, right? So here we're having an adjective in the place of a noun, with all of your very. Because the word me'od means very. That's what it means. So now we've got to make peace with this and try to understand. So let me clarify. So just because English doesn't do that, it doesn't mean Hebrew can't. Hebrew is the mother of all languages. It's the language in which God created the world. So Hebrew could do whatever he wants. God could do whatever he wants, right? So the meaning of the word me'od. Well, let me first tell you how to read the word, okay? Here it is. The word is me'od. It starts with a mem. We know this letter very, very well by now. It's the letter that looks like a mountain. It's got the base. It's got the summit, and it's got a flag on top. A letter that looks like a mountain is a mem letter. And then we got the aleph, which is the most famous letter of the Hebrew language. The aleph is a silent letter. And we've learned about the dalid. The dalid is the letter which has a ponytail in the back, as opposed to the resh, which has no ponytail. The resh is rounded at the back. The dalid has a dent. Because it's got a dent at the back, looks like a hammer making a dent. It's a dalid letter. Together, they make the word me'od. Again, if you don't have this, I encourage you to go to the App Store, to Google or the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, where you can find the app called RIIH. That's Read It in Hebrew. RIIH, which is an app that will help you get familiar with these letters. I encourage you to buy it for $1.99. So this is the word me'od. Me'od means very. I'm going to add that word now to our Hebrew word diaries because the word very is an important word, like Andy just pointed out. If you want to say something is very, let's say you go to Israel and people are asking you how you're feeling. You want to say, I'm very happy. So happy is sameach. You'll say, ani me'od sameach. I'm very happy. That's what you'll say. Right? Ani me'od sameach. Me'od means very. That's what it means. So we really have to be able to understand the meditation. Now that we understand we know how to read it, and we know the meaning of the word very, we now have to understand the meditation of it, which is going to tie into all these discussions here. Brandon, adjective and adverb. In me'od, you simply have an adverb modifying an adjective. It's been a good few years since I was in high school, Brandon. I'm trying to remember what's an adverb. Is an adjective of the verb. Me'od verb, you simply have an adverb modifying an adjective. I'm not sure if you're asking a question or making a statement. I'm not clear exactly what you're doing. Me'od. Okay. I'm not sure if you're agreeing or disagreeing, Brandon, about me'od being very. In any event, that's what the word means. I'd like to welcome Alex from California, watching us live from California. This is great. Good. Alex, hope the weather's nice out there. Me'od yafeh, very nice out there, and very nice to have you with us. So, the meaning of the word me'od is very. We're being commanded to love God, which itself, by the way, is a little weird. How can you be commanded to love? Love? I command you to love chocolate. How on earth am I supposed to be commanded to go ahead with that? What happens if I don't love chocolate? How about if I hate chocolate? I'm commanding you to love the person that lives next door to you. I happen to very much not love the person that lives next door to you. So why would I love? How could you love? This is an idea that ties in beautifully with what we've been learning in Tanya, by the way. I'm coming back to Me'od in a second. But how can you get commanded? What's the meditation here? The reason is that as human beings, created in the image of God, we have a structure of the 10 sefirot, the 10 attributes. And just like God has chosen to express himself in this world through the 10 attributes which he revealed to us in the Torah, 3 intellectual and the 7 emotional attributes, we've learned a lot about them in Tanya, in our Tanya classes. Generally speaking, there are 3 intellectual and 7 emotional attributes that make up the expression of our soul. We can only express our soul through these 10 attributes. Wisdom, understanding, and realization, kindness, strictness, compassion, triumph, humility, communication, or foundation and communication. So these are the 10 attributes of our soul, and by default, the rational, the intellectual rules and dominates over the emotional. The mind rules over the heart. What the mind meditates upon is what the heart begins to feel based upon the evolution of the 10 attributes. This is a fundamental principle of Tanya. And when we understand this notion, we can begin to understand how we can be commanded to love God, our God, because you've been commanded to actually meditate upon the greatness of God, to reflect and meditate upon the uniqueness of God and how God is not what you think, to be able to realize that God is truly great, almighty, all-powerful, kind, generous, caring. And when you reflect about that greatness of God, which, by the way, is the theme of our prayers. When you think about it, why don't you just walk into shul and start the Shema? Because you can't start the Shema. Why don't we cut straight to the chase? Because you can't. You need to experience the prayers leading up to the Shema, which speak about God's benevolence, God's greatness, God's almighty power. That's what we're describing in what's called praise. We're praising God not because God needs our praise. We're praising God because we need to know that God is great. God doesn't suffer from self-esteem issues. It's us that need to know how great God is, and thus we verbally affirm those realizations at the beginning of davening, from the Hodu, from the beginning of prayer until we reach the Shema, so that by the time we reach the Shema, now we've reflected upon, we've meditated upon the greatness of God. Now we're ready to start to feel. Now we can say v'ahavta, now you can love. And that's the meditation behind the love. You've got to realize that you've got to be meditating. That's why we cover our eyes when we say Shema Yisrael. When we realize the meditation that we've been talking about in the past few weeks, and you realize Hashem Echad, God is one. There's nothing else besides for God. Not just that God is the only God, but that God is the only thing that exists. Nothing else exists outside of God. When you realize that meditation, that God is every single thing around me, you say, wow, I can have a relationship with that? With the master of the universe on a first person, one-to-one basis? I'm humbled. I'm blown away. I'm starting to feel like so loved. And that's why you feel love. So now that's the meaning, the meditation behind Ve'ahavta, behind loving God Almighty, who is also Mother Nature, right? Okay, so I just want to comment, just as we're running out of time over here. I'm going to skip the loving God with all your heart, which is actually hearts in the plural. We're going to talk about that. Why you love God with both of your hearts and loving God. But I want to go to the end part. It says the last two. Love God with all your soul and with all your very. So your veriness is your might, wealth, and strength of your very essence. Yeah, so Rashi interprets your very to be with all of your might. That's what very means. Very means your strength. What's your strength? Your strength is your money, your strength. So love God with all of your strength. And I believe it is Rashi that says you should love God with all of your money. And that's how we understand it to mean. Love him with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your money. Because a man's money is his strength. That's interesting. Love God with all your money. So you should be loving him with your heart. We can relate to that. You should love him with your soul. That means you should be willing to lay down your life for God. That's a commandment. You know, when Rabbi Akiva was being executed by the Romans, his students stood around and they said, Rabbi Akiva, our Rebbe, he's 120 years old. They were combing his flesh with combs of iron. They were literally flaying the flesh off of his face. God forbid. He was suffering unspeakable torture. And they said to him, Zu Torah v'zu schara. Is this Torah and this its reward? It ties in beautifully with what we just learned in the Gates of Trust about why the wicked prosper and why the righteous suffer. They said, is this Torah and this its reward? I mean, is this what it boils down to? Seriously? And he says, Kol yomai ha'isi mitztayr. All the days of my life, I was distressed. When will it come to my hand so that I may fulfill it? He was referring to the mitzvah of laying down your life for God. I was yearning for the opportunity to be able to exhibit my faith by dying for God. And that's what he did. We read about him. Rabbi Akiva is one of the 10 martyrs. At the end of the Yom Kippur service in the morning, the Musaf service of Yom Kippur, we read about the 10 martyrs, those that gave up their lives for God. And there were millions of Jews that did the same, that died for God. That is the fulfillment of B'chol Nafshecha, of loving God with all of your soul, being able to say, I am giving up my life for God. And by the way, this ties in perfectly. If you followed the Tanya class from yesterday, 2 days ago. The Tanya class from 2 days ago was chapter 25, where we spoke about the red line doctrine, where you realize that I'd be willing to die for God, so surely I should be willing to live for God as well. It all ties in. It's all beautifully connected. That was the Tanya class. So the commandment here is to be able to die for God. And we find many, many cases that Jewish people will do so, even people that are far, far, far away from being religious people. But when their push comes to shove, and when they're forced to pledge allegiance to another faith, or to renounce their belief in God, or to die, in many cases they'll die. What's surprising, however, is why the commandment to serve God with all of your money, with all of your strength, comes after the commandment to give up your life for God. I mean, if you gave up your life for God, isn't that about it? Who holds on to their money more than they hold on to their lives? The order seemingly should be love God with your heart, with your money, and with your life. Isn't giving up your life at everything? If once that's given away, you've given up everything you've got? The answer is no. There are many people out there that value their money more than they value their lives. There are people that value their money more than they value their lives. I believe there was a study put out recently that when human beings are faced with the choice between convenience or safety, they will typically choose convenience. They'll typically choose, the financial convenience more than they'll choose the safety of their lives. And it's an interesting point to ponder. It was Jack Benny, comedian, who said a story of a guy. He's walking down the street in Manhattan, and he feels a cold gun stuck into his back of his neck. And a gruff voice calls out, and it says, "Your money or your life?" No answer. After a few seconds, the voice repeats itself, "Your money or your life," as the revolver digs deeper into his back of his neck. And the guy says, I'm thinking. So there certainly are people that will give up their lives before they'll give up their money. They'll be willing to die for their money, as counterintuitive as that sounds. They'll put themselves in grave danger. They'll put their lives in grave danger in order to salvage their money. There's a very strange ritual called the Pidyon Haben, the redemption of the firstborn, and I have to comment on it. Pidyon Haben happens when a firstborn child is born to the son of Israelites. No Levites, no Kohens from mother or father. And when this firstborn son is born, obviously we do the bris on the 8th day, but if it's a firstborn and if there was no C-section, then on the 31st day of the boy's life, we do a redemption of the firstborn, because really the firstborn belonged to Hashem. How do we know? Because from the plague of the firstborn and the coming out of Egypt, all firstborns belong to God, because God killed all the Egyptian firstborns and he spared the Jewish firstborns. Therefore, all the Jewish firstborns belong to God. If you want to keep your Jewish firstborn, then you have to redeem him for 5 shekels from the Kohen, from the priest. And in this interesting ritual, what we do till today, on the 31st day, I'm actually working on a Pidyon Haben right now, planning one for someone that just had a baby. So what you do is that you bring the baby to a Kohen, to a priest, and the Kohen will ask, will you, the father of this Israelite baby, would you rather that I keep the money and you keep the baby? Or would you rather that I keep the baby and you keep the 5 silver shekels? And hopefully the father will say, I'll take the baby, you keep the money, and gives them the 5 shekels, and we'll have a party, we eat, and it's fun. But, it sounds out of this world. It sounds outrageous, but really, it happens all the time. How often does it happen that a father or mother is being tugged at by the child that says, Mommy, Daddy, come play with me. I want to show you something. Or the child is telling mom and dad about something important in their lives, and mom and dad is just too busy staring at their phones, trying to do a deal or make some money, or who knows what they're trying to do. Where effectively you're showing that your child is less important. Your child's life is less important. Your life is less important than the money that you're trying to earn. And what happens when you raise a child? When you raise a child, you raise them to the values of life, or do you raise them to the values of money? I know someone that told me that he told his son, you can do whatever you want as long as you make money. It makes no difference to me. No morals, no values make any difference. As long as you're making money, I'll be proud of you. Horrifying. What a horrible thought to think that that money is the ideal for which life is all about. We as Jews realize that there are people like that. And that's why in the Torah it says that you shall love God, your God, with all your heart. Love him with all your life. And if necessary, you should also love him with all your money, because that's human nature. And we are drawn in that direction. And it's this meditation that we come to think about when we see this funny sequence of life coming before money, to be able to realize that we have to be cognizant of putting our values in the correct sequence. Never have I met someone on his deathbed who said to me, Rabbi, I regret not having spent more time in the office. I wish I would have closed one more deal. I wish I would have bought that other property. Nobody ever said that to me. But I always ask people, what are they most proud of? And they always tell me, I'm most proud of my children. I'm most proud of my family. And that's what we have to really focus on and realize that there's nothing more important than being together, than being with each other, than valuing the really important things in life. At the end of the day, money comes and goes, but it's our own lives that are more important than anything else. And that's the meditation which I want to leave you with today as we conclude our meditation and prayer class for today. And these comments which you spending overtime on career over spending time with the kids and family. Exactly. We're so busy making a living that we most often tend to forget to live. And one thing about this quarantine is that it forced us to slow down and smell the roses. It forced us to stop. There's no overtime. It's actually not even acceptable to work these days. You can't really go to work. And it's forced us to stop and focus on what's really important to our lives. And maybe that's a blessing. It's a silver lining in this quarantine for us to really meditate and reflect on this verse. You shall love God, your God, with all your love, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your with all your might, with all your money. To really focus on our values and the priorities in our life, to make sure that we emerge from this quarantine with a chiropractic shift, with a seismic shift. Making sure that our values are properly aligned and properly directed, focused on our faith, focused on our family, focused on our friends, and everything which is ancillary stays ancillary to that. Helen, the child looks at the phone becomes the substitute parent. Tragic. If you allow your children to look at the phone like that is tragedy. We are very strict with our kids. We allow them only certain hours on the phone, and very, very strong and strict limitations, because the phone can easily become an addiction. We know it from ourselves. And therefore, the phone should be definitely protected from the child, because the child doesn't know where to draw the line in that. In any event, I want to thank you for joining me here this morning. Shalom and God.